Everybody, welcome to the Uncommon Freedom Show. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by two great friends of mine, Mike and Glori Storms. Mike and Glori, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kev, thanks for having us.
Thanks
Absolutely.
so much.
And you two live in Louisiana, right?
Yes, sir. About an hour and 15 minutes north of New Orleans.
Awesome. So for those of you listening and watching, Mike and Glori have been married for 28 years to each other. 4 kids. They have 2 boys and 2 girls. They are imperfect parents, believe it or not, that knew they had to get better intelligence. Mike's Marine Corps background coming out there, had to get better intel and break the chains of the culture and parent differently. Boy, is that true. Parenting is tough. Get a helmet. That's some great advice. So Mike and Glori, welcome to the show. Tell us first a little bit about your homestead there in Louisiana.
Well, we had a dream for over a decade because we went to farm camps as kids, and she went to horse camp, and we always wanted some land. And we looked and looked, and then we stopped looking and give up because we couldn't find anything nice. And then we just found a place that we both liked with big trees and roll to the land on a dead-end street. So we 6 years ago, we bought a little over 10 acres and then improved it and then built a little barn house on it and have some sheep, some cows, some chickens, some ducks, too many donkeys, about to be 3. One's about to have a baby, and 4 dogs and 2 cats. And did I miss anything?
Probably.
Probably.
We have no idea.
We have no idea how many animals we have.
Surrounded by jackasses is what you're saying.
Yeah, but we love it. It's quiet. It's peaceful. We get fresh duck and chicken eggs all the time. We have beautiful well water from an artesian source. We have
a beautiful garden.
And a beautiful 40 by 60 organic garden, blueberry bushes, blackberry bushes. So we like it. It's nice. It suits us now, and AKA it's our bug out place. So.
Yeah. Did either one of you grow up doing that type of gardening and farming type of stuff, or is this something that you kind of just learned as you got into it?
It was a deep learning curve, and we learned as we grew. I have a great mentor. You met him, my buddy Jared Tomich, and he has a big farm in Indiana, and he's about 5 years ahead of me. So he was kind of our mentor, helped us get our first sheep and cows and the whole thing, and then guided me along the way. And then people in farming communities, you go to the feed store, they're so generous with their knowledge.
They're very generous.
People are wonderful, right? If you're not bumping into wonderful people, go to the feed store. People at the feed store are wonderful.
Yeah, and Google is very helpful.
Yeah.
Google's pretty smart too.
Yeah, no, it's funny. When I was about 13 years old, my parents bought a property about 45 minutes south of Cleveland, but it was out in the country, 33 acres, which to me, growing up in the suburbs of Cleveland, it was like out in the middle of nowhere. And it was such a drastic change of pace. It was amazing, where people are just there to help. It's this, this kind of this laid back country pace of life. And, you really, neighbors would help each other with things like splitting firewood. My parents didn't have the money for great cars. Our neighbor would like tow us all the way, 15 miles from when the car broke down back to my parents' house instead of, them having to call a tow truck. So there's something to be said for the rural pace of living. And speaking of mentors, everyone needs a mentor in their life. And today we're going to talk about the book that you guys wrote called Parenting 101. In my hands, I have a copy of the workbook. Also, Mike, I'm wondering, I got this book from you, and there's this weird guy next to your wife. Tell me a little bit, like, who is he?
Yeah, I don't know who the hell that is, but I had a goatee because I was trying to hide my double chin. But that was me, 13, 14 years ago, right? Our daughter and the little girl in the picture is now 20. And I was on the seafood diet. I would seafood and I would eat it, all of it. Because she always, as you can see by the picture in the book and now, she's always looked exactly the same since the day we met, 125 pounds. So I was a larger person then. I've lost a small toddler since I decided to dial in my habits and eat better.
That's awesome. Well, as we dig into the book, got some questions for you, and then we'll kind of see where it takes us. But the first question is, why did you two decide to begin studying parenting?
The primary reason was because once we became parents, we realized that this gig was a lot harder than we thought it was going to be. When you're a young person and you're like being raised by your parents, and how many people have said, I will never do what my parents did to me, right? But when you actually get in the role yourself, you realize that there's so much more to it. And they just let you take that baby home from the hospital. It's like, here, there you go. Good luck.
And they all laugh while walking away. They have no idea what's about to happen to them.
So we wrote it because we had studied, we wrote the book because we had studied, and then we kept running into people who literally were lost as far as how to create structure for their children, how to make parenting manageable, particularly in the karate school.
Right.
I saw a lot of that.
Right. And then for us, as far as learning, Kev, we didn't want to parent from the ghosts of our past. There were a few things our parents did well. There were some things that we kind of knew wasn't something we wanted to repeat. And I wanted to be, God rest his soul, my dad, I wanted to be a much better father was. And I knew I started studying parenting before I had children. I communicate better. And I'm still studying parenting because parenting's really, if you boil it down, it's leadership. You're leading another person, right? So you got to be a better listener. You got to be a better communicator. You got to be clear with expectations, boundaries, and guidelines. And yelling doesn't help. So I just had to unpack all this stuff that I had wrong and reinstall new beliefs about how to parent our kids in a way that gave them the greatest chance to grow into the person God created them to be, rather than throwing them down, verbally or emotionally, psychologically, just to get our way.
Were there some specific people that you went to and sought mentorship from, or there's some specific books or courses that you both read, studied, attended that had a positive impact? Could you share some of those with us?
Absolutely.
Love and Logic.
Great book.
Is Parenting with Love and Logic. That was one of the books that we read. Shepherding a Child's Heart.
Yep.
And again, when we recommend a book, just like our book, like I told you, bro, we wrote that book, I would change it, 12 years later. The books that you get, don't throw out the really good stuff in the book because there was 20% of it you didn't agree with.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Chew the meat, spit out the bones. Find the gems in there. Some parts of the book might turn you off, but those books were wonderful, 80% of them. Other 20% of them, I was like, nah, that doesn't resonate with my soul or my value system, so I'm not going to take that principle. But both those books are fantastic. I am a mentor seeker, right? So I reached out to older gentlemen in our church and people in the community that had good kids that were teenagers. When my kids were little, I was like, what in the heck did you do to have that happen? Mm-hmm. And the honest one said, all we have to do as parents is not screw our kids up, bringing our baggage into the parenting equation, and then let them know that they're safe and give them the guardrails like they have on the interstate to keep them safe when they go through their knuckleheads phases, which is from 8 to 30.
What are some of the biggest things that the two of you have learned in parenting for the last 30 years?
Teamwork is critical.
You mean between the two of you as spouses?
Yeah, right. And a mentor taught me this. Here's the husband and wife. If that's not the primary relationship and they get a little distant, the kids fall through the cracks.
Ah, great visual.
So Glori and I made sure that the kids knew that our relationship was the priority, that we were a unified front for the kids. Oh, I'm going to go ask mom, or I'm going to go ask Matt, I'm going to go ask dad. That kind of plain, kids are terrorists. Can we just hear it? They're going to play the parents against one another. She was a bit easier going than I am. I know everyone's shocked.
Yeah, shocked.
And I was a little bit more intense, but kids can smell a division, right? And not arguing in front of your kids about stuff with your kids. Like, I don't think you should be grounded for a week. I think you should be grounded for 2 weeks. I think you're wrong. Parent,
Yeah.
you can't do that stuff. So that was a big thing of a unified front. What else would you say was some of the biggest things that we had to do?
One of the biggest adjustments that we had to make was that when our children would make mistakes, that we needed to respond rather than react. And when I say react, I mean yelling, possibly all the things that parents do when their kids do things, because we're feeling things on the inside of us. We're afraid of where this might go. Sometimes we're embarrassed by their behavior if it was something that was done publicly. So there's all these things that's going on inside us that will actually cause us to react in a way that is not going to be helpful for the situation, and nor is it going to serve our relationship with our children. So we really had to learn how to, give it a minute if we weren't feeling in control, and just that it had to be okay sometimes for us to say, hey, just go to your room for a little while. I'll talk to you about this later, rather than deal with something right on the spot if we thought that we weren't going to be our best selves in that interaction.
Yeah, de-escalation is a very good thing. And you know that from being a police officer, bro.
Yes.
De-escalate.
That yelling
is not teaching or coaching.
And lecturing
is not a consequence. Right.
So that was a big thing for me, is that
huge.
You don't have to yell at your kids when they do something wrong. You can have a conversation with them, and that really asking questions to find out what was the root of the issue is the more important thing.
Well, and spin off of that, what we're trying to do is raise responsible adults. Mm-hmm. So we have to ask questions so that every parenting connection with a mistake or bad judgment or something a kid did is a learning opportunity. And one of the things this is the thing I would tell all parents: you discipline out of love. The word discipline means to teach. You punish out of anger. And if you have anger in your parenting decisions, it's almost always the wrong decision, just like fear, right? So to the point that Glori made, when I leaned forward and said to my sons, we're going to talk about this tonight before you go to bed. I want you to go in your room and think about it. And think about what might have been a better choice and decision. When I got quiet and calm, they were like, oh, no.
It's like being called by all three names.
Right, yeah.
When Dad gets quiet.
But I had to learn that.
Yeah.
My father was an unkind man to me almost every day of my life verbally. And it was, plus, bro, I'm a Marine. Everything I was taught, it was yelled at me.
Yep.
And my martial arts background. So parenting, if you work in a job, you work in a company, anybody, I know you and Becca have a beautiful business. Don't talk to your kids in a way you wouldn't talk to your top client or top business partner. Think there's an HR department in your home. And if you insult, harass, threaten, or scream at your kid, HR is calling you out, and you might get fired or you might get ripped. Right? We're fans of Blue Blood. We like that TV show. So, because it's unnecessary and it doesn't add to the communication. It doesn't add to if I yell loud enough or ground enough or lecture enough, they'll learn. That's not where, there's no learning taking place. What did you do when your kids yelled at you, Kev?
Oh, you mean like when my parents yelled at me? Yeah, I think you tend to shut it out.
100%.
You lose respect.
Yeah.
Shut down.
Yeah.
And remember, and this is a teaching thing for my martial arts thing and my football stuff, I never sacrifice relationship and make technique the priority. I never want to sacrifice relationship or connection with my wife, with my kids, with my team, with my players over an error they made in a game or in a decision or action. that doesn't help anything.
And one of the things that Michael was a great leader and example in our family for this is that when our children, no matter what age they were, right, when they did something that resulted in consequences for them, sometimes when your kids do things, you're so shocked that they did it. And, there's all the stuff happening in you that the tendency is to kind of just want to avoid them and to put some distance because you've been hurt, right? We don't want to hang out with people that hurt us. So one of the things that he did is he intentionally, when our kids were on consequences, he would draw closer to them relationally. So to separate, okay, here are the consequences for what you did, but that doesn't change how much I love you. So there was no cold shoulder. There was no silent treatment. Sometimes they got more attention than they would even normally have gotten. Hey, come sit with me and let's go, let's look at this. Let's do this together. Deliberately recreating a connection, because when trust is broken, the connection is broken. But then rebuilding that trust and helping them to rebuild the trust with you, because that's what relationships are about. And that's what happens in the real world. You lie to someone, you deceive someone, there's a breaking of relationship. And so it gives the opportunity to learn what that restoration process should look like.
It's beautiful. And, you think, and our faith is, I know we're probably going to talk about this. God's kindness is what leads us to repentance. Our kindness and love. I'm just so mad at my son. I can't go kiss him goodnight, tuck him in, read him a story. He stole something and lied about it. So he's not going to prison. He's not going to, you go forward and catastrophize. And if I don't stop this right now, he's going to go. It's not going to happen like that. But the relationship, hey, buddy, no matter what you do, I love you. I don't agree with your decision and your action, but I'm your dad. You're my son. I'm still proud of you. Don't think you made the best choice here. You get no cell phone for 2 weeks. But I still love you. Hey, I'm going to go make some eggs. You want some eggs? And they're just like, what the? It's like a weird thing for particularly a teenager. When you're nice to them and they're punished, consequences, no car. No car for a week. You broke curfew. Hey, you want to get ice cream?
Yeah. So what I hear you talking about is, I think we have a tendency as parents to have this universal punishment. You screwed up, and we're going to make every aspect of your life miserable. And what you're saying is, no, there still needs to be a consequence, but don't let that consequence spill over into every area of your relationship with them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And the more natural the consequence based on what was done, the better. So I won't name, but we have 4 kids. Okay. So I'm not saying which one. We had a child that did some things on the cell phone that were an absolute no. So the natural consequence of that is we didn't feel that we could trust that child with the cell phone for a period of time.
She said child, she means teenager.
Yeah, till the trust was restored. So phone goes away. It's the natural consequence of misuse of a cell phone, irresponsible use of a cell phone. Something happens with the car. Lots of things happen in cars with kids. So if something happens in the car, then we're going to take the car because we don't feel safe. We don't feel confident about giving you the car right now until you're a little more responsible.
And the things, and our kids complain, like all kids complain. Well, my friend didn't get this. My friend didn't get that. We never talked about the other kids. We said we do things differently in the Storms family.
Yeah, that is definitely, number one, our kids always complain oh, we're the only ones. I'm like,
oh, we have the worst refrigerator in the neighborhood.
You don't want fair, because if life was fair, remember what life is like in, when we've done missions trips to Mexico and Kenya, that's how 90% of the world is. Do you want life to be fair? Number one. And number two, you learn when you talk to other parents, you find out that many of them are handling things. Right now we have one of our kids is on a middle school trip, and he didn't want to go. He's like, I'm the only one who's going. And like, none of my friends are going. And we're like, oh, well, that's too bad, but you're going anyways. And then as Becca especially is talking to some of these other mothers, like, oh, is your son not going? No, he's going. Is your son going? Oh, yeah, he's going. You said that your son wasn't going, and it's just circular, definitely what trust, but what is it? Trust but verify, or anything kids say, for sure.
That's right.
So we briefly touched on faith. I know we both share a Christian faith. Honestly, I can't imagine being married for a lifetime or being decent parents without that foundation. But can you just share, what part your faith has played in your parenting?
We've done it both ways.
Okay. Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, so I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior 18 years ago. We'd already been parenting for 14, Austin's 32.
Yeah. Wow.
We'd already been parenting for 14 years.
Yikes.
Right? We got saved when our 20-year-old was 2, and our other kids were like 11, 12, 13. And I got saved. Glori got saved the next month. All of our kids got saved.
Our teenager actually got saved in a youth group that a neighbor would bring him to
on Wednesday nights
before we got saved.
And then they invited us to the church, and it was just life-changing.
Pretty amazing.
Right. So, Kev, just like you said, I could not be the husband that I want to be. And that person changes every day. I want to be a better husband every day. But if I didn't hear from God how important his daughter is to him, this girl, every day, and I tell people this openly, like when we first got saved, like I'm from New Jersey, bro. I can talk a lot of crap. And I can turn an argument around on somebody and gaslight them where they feel like they were wrong, even though I was totally wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's a curse and a gift. I don't use it anymore. But we had an argument right after I got saved, and I was wrong, but I turned it around on her, and she got upset, and and I was like, can I go to bed that night? I'm praying, God, thank you. I'm so grateful, and I'd just been saved a few months. Nothing, silence. And then I heard, how dare you talk to my daughter that way? I didn't give you this gift of yours of communication to beat her down and be right when you're wrong. And I went and put my head in her lap and sobbed and asked for forgiveness because I felt the conviction and the pressure. As a parent, as a husband, I couldn't do what I feel called to do in my own strength. I could not do it, bro. Yeah. I couldn't be patient. I couldn't be kind. I couldn't be generous. I couldn't be forgiving. But when all that stuff is overflowingly given to me on a daily basis, here's my cup, right? The grace and forgiveness and love and care that God gives me overflows onto my wife and my kids and my neighbors and my clients and my business partners and my players and coaches. It's the foundation of everything in our parenting and marriage. For me, what about you?
In addition to what you said, so all of that for sure, but also having the perspective of that it's really God's child, and
that's so good.
This child is here for God's purposes and God's plans, not my purposes and my plans.
Wow.
We all have dreams for our kids. We want them to have all the things we never had and be all the things that we didn't get a chance to be. But really, it's God's plan that we need to be stewarding for them. And so it requires that we be, very close to him so we can hear from him as regards to each child, because every child is different. And so you might have to do something a little different with one child that you did with another because of temperaments, because of the calling on their lives. It's going to be different for each one. Birth order even makes a tremendous difference in how you have to kind of adjust your parenting to that child. So seeing it through God's eye and just always asking, God, what is it that you want for this child? Which way do you want me to go, steer, lead, guide this child for your purposes and for your glory? And it could look very different than what we expect.
And just Another thing is, anyone who's listening to this or watching this, Glori and I are in our second marriage. We've been together 28 years. I have 2 kids from my first marriage. She has 1. We had to combine, then we have 1 together. So we have 2 boys, 2 girls. We never used the step word because we were coached and taught. That's important to not have that word separation. But before we got saved, the first 2 or 3 years we were married, but then we got marriage coaching and counseling, which made a huge difference because you got to get mentorship. You got to get clear voices speaking in your life. But you can still have a steady, calm parenting structure, habits, routines in your family, even if you're in a blended family, even if you're a single parent. Well, Mike, I don't have Glori. I don't have you as my partner to link arms with and do this parenting with. I have this resistant other parenting. That's okay. Do what you can do in your house. Have peace in your house. Have conversations in your house. Become the best parent you can be, even if you're a counter parent, and having to swing the pendulum the best way that you can. It's just doing what you can with what you have, the best of your ability, and let God lead you, and get some good mentors and read some good books, and just always level up.
Yeah. And kind of where you were talking about, Glori, just a few minutes ago, Becca and I heard this quote, and it definitely hit us to the core of our parenting souls. But we need to raise the children that God gave us, not the children that we want. And you talk about that, right? You hear about these kids who are forced to be, go down a certain career path because that's what their family has always done. And I think that's so destructive to the soul and really the calling, like you said, stewardship, like we're the parents, but God gave them to us. 100 years ago, you had 12 to 14 years with them. For better or for worse, I think in many ways it's actually worse that we have 18 plus years with our kids. The more I learn about history and just the fact that adolescence is a roughly 100-year-old phenomenon, the whole concept of a teenager. When I look at the struggles that we have with our kids, especially our older 2, I'm realizing God intended for them to be married and having sex with their wife. I know this is going to shock some people, but at the age of 14, right?
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Hey, listen, and I'm all for arranged marriages too, bro. Yeah. And arranged apprenticeships. Hey, we're going to send you out on a ship. You're going to go to this electrician or this carpenter or this plumber. Yeah, I'm all for it.
You look at most of the problems that our teenagers are facing today, and I really feel like if they were getting married at the age of 14, where all of a sudden you don't have time for video games because your life depends on you working your butt off. Yeah. Like so many of the problems that our kids are dealing with are the result of the Industrial Revolution. Yes. And the fact that we've decided, we're going to keep our kids and allow them, we're going to lower the bar. We're going to expect very little of them because they get to extend childhood until they're 18 to, 30 years old or whatever. So
too much free time, too many toys.
Absolutely. So kind of leads us into the perfect question of what stages of parenting did you find were the toughest? Were there some stages that were consistently the most challenging with all 4 kids, or did it vary from child to child?
We may not have the same answer on this. I'm curious. Okay, so I would have to say that the teenage years were the most challenging.
Agree 10,000%.
And we had 3 children who were all bunched together, 3 years, 1, 2, 3, 1 year apart each.
Wow.
And then we had another child 10 years later. So we almost have, like, these groups of kids were brought up in 2 different worlds.
Yeah, almost 2 different generations. Yeah.
Yes, like completely different.
There was no social media when our 32, 31, and 30-year-old were teenagers.
Yeah.
Didn't exist.
They were just getting flip phones.
Texting
was just becoming a thing. So with our youngest, completely different. And then now even the kids that are coming up, so she's 20 now. So the kids that are 15 now are even facing a greater challenge in all of those areas. So we really acknowledge for parents who are parenting teenagers, even youngsters now, because it's all about the screens, even from infant up, it's about the screens.
Sure.
We really just have so much compassion for people who are raising children right now. It's tough. It's tougher than it's ever been, at least as far as my experience of being a mother for 31 years. It's tougher than it's ever been.
Yeah. I agree with you.
So I would say teenagers, because of the things you talked about, Kevin, the dealing with sexuality, and all of the things that are going on around that right now that
it's another podcast
we weren't really talking about 20 years ago, right? And now
a lot of this we weren't talking about 3 years ago. I mean,
right.
look at the acceleration of debauchery in this country in the last.
Can't get away from it.
It's mind blowing. It really is mind blowing.
Yes, and at a time when children are, young people are trying to find who they are, and all these options for them now, and they have to make decisions for things that they didn't have to make decisions about before. So the sexuality part, the social media, pornography on the internet, and
at your fingertips,
easily accessible it is. I would definitely say that, and even I guess from 10 or 11.
Yeah, and for me as a personal safety teacher, coach, mentor person, bullying, like the suicides in kids, is just off the charts. Bullying at school, Kev, when you and I were in school, it was 8-3. Then we went on our way, did our sports, rode our bikes, did whatever. It's a 24-hour bully cycle.
Because of social media.
Yeah.
24-hour bully cycle. There's no downtime. There's no peace at home.
No break.
There's no break. And then the lack of, and everything falls or stands on leadership. The lack of leadership in the schools come down on people that are psychologically, mentally, and emotionally abusing their classmates and other kids in junior high school and high school. There seems to be no backbone to do anything about it. And then the parents of these kids that are getting bullied are lost. The parents of the bullies have no idea they're doing it because of social media. So like our daughter who's 20, she didn't get her phone until she was 16?
16.
And she didn't get social media until she was 18 because she started college and they needed it for the leadership class she was in because they communicated on Snapchat or something.
Yep.
So even then she had some struggles with it, but we delayed it tremendously. But for the people, if you listen to this, your kids don't need a phone when they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Yeah.
They don't need more than 30 minutes of screen time. And at our house, everything with screen time, we learned this. Your chores are done. Your homework's done. You've earned 30 minutes of video games. Video games are not a right.
Right.
They're a privilege.
Yep.
Cell phone use is not a right. It's a privilege. And privileges are earned through responsible conduct, behavior. We don't pay for chores. You do your chores. It's part of living in community in this house.
Yeah.
Now, if I ask you to cut the grass and I'm paying somebody to cut the grass, then I'm going to pay you to cut the grass, but I'm only going to pay you half what I'm paying that guy. And my son would say, "You're paying that guy 40. Why are you paying me 20? I'm like, "I don't feed him."
Exactly.
We'll cut the grass. I mean, it was fun when my sons were still for Easter when they were like 12 and 11. I bought them a lawnmower and said, "I'm retired, guys.
Happy Easter.
$10 for the front yard, $10 for the backyard. Happy Easter."
I love it.
And my kids complained and they fussed. My oldest son who played college football and we're very close. There was a couple of years in high school, his junior, senior year, or half his freshman year in college, where we were not close. And then he's like 25, 26. He's like, "Dad, I get why you did all that stuff now. And I'm better off than all my friends."
Yep.
I didn't like it then, but now I see kind of what's going on. And, we're super close now. He's like the one who calls us and reaches out to us and comes over and stuff.
Wow, that's awesome.
Teenagers is tough. And it's tougher now.
Yeah.
If anyone tells you raising your teenagers isn't, your kids don't need you to be their friend. They need you to be their parent. You can be friendly with them. You can be their friend. Don't try to be their best friend. You're not going to have boundaries and standards. Kids don't need you to be their best friend, right? So that thing where parents are like, "Oh, parenting's easy." Those are yes parents.
Yep.
There's no boundaries. They give the kid their credit card. They don't have a curfew. They don't care if their kid's drinking. we had a deal with our kids. If you started drinking, it's the all-state driving contract. And look it up, download it. If you drink, I'm out. You buy your own gas, you pay your own car insurance, and you can't pay it.
Yeah, trust me, we're our oldest just turned 16 this week, and I called up our insurance company, and
it's bananas.
$500 a month for even on a 2013 Honda Accord that we're looking at him buying. Basically, it's a 50-50.
That's what we did.
Yeah, but $500 a month, which is insane.
Wow.
So, and kind of our agreement is we'll pay 75%, but our philosophy is you got to have skin in the game, right? Same thing, like driving. Yeah, it makes life a little bit easier for us, but it also creates a tremendous amount of, stress and concern and worry for us. And it's like, you don't have to drive. When I was a kid, I used to bike everywhere. And, it's like, hey, kids they're capable of a lot more than we let them do in many ways. And then on the flip side, we give them things that we should never be giving them. Like you said, cell phones. It's mind blowing to me that, my kids are probably for every grade that my kids are in, they're on the small end of the bell curve when it comes to like freedom with electronics. And, it creates a tremendous amount of peer pressure. But the reality is the solution is if parents would just actually be parents and say, you know what? No, you don't get a phone, or you don't get free access to a phone. Like, if we took the number of kids, 12-year-olds from a phone, I would bet it's 90+%. But if they actually did their job and we got that down to 10%, the peer pressure would disappear, right?
Oh, and it would eliminate a ton of problems with porno addiction in adolescence.
Yep.
And 10, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. Those predators are trolling for those kids.
Yeah.
They want to get in their minds. They want to turn them into consumers and perverts now.
Yeah.
It actually changes the brain chemistry, right?
Yep.
We're big fans of Dr. Amen. We read all of his stuff about what happens to the brain when you do stuff, because that's such a big part of our health. And if you're a parent, you listen to this too, the reason you got to give your kids so much grace, you think it's being a parent to stuff? It's tough being a kid.
Yes.
It's tough being a kid. I didn't feel like I fit in at all when I was a kid. I talked too much. I was too hyper, whatever. And it's still kind of feel that way once in a while. But give your kids grace, love on them, make sure they know that you're in their corner, but you're not going to be permissive and give into the world and the countries and the media pressure.
Yes, we are in a spiritual battle for our children. All
100%.
of us are. I mean, Kevin, you're in the thick of it right now. So you can see, I'm sure very clearly, that it's a spiritual battle. So be prepared to swim against the current. You're going to be swimming against all the other parents that have either just given up or don't know any other way to be. So you have to create that culture within your family, as Michael said, that we don't do things that way, but it has to be like a tinter tribe kind of thing. There has to be, right? If we're going to be part of a group, we want it to be a cool group too. So it might have some weird rules in it, but it's got to be cool too. So we got to make being a tinter super awesome, which I could think of 100 ways you guys could do that, right? You live an extraordinary life. Mm-hmm. So, making it cool to be a tinter and to maybe have some different rules because, we're going to do things differently and we're going to have different lives, right?
What do you want? How do you want to live?
But be prepared that there's going to be a lot of pushback. Don't be intimidated by that. They kind of have to push back. They want to be like Michael said, they want to belong. They want to be like everyone else. They kind of got to push back, but they are counting on you.
Yeah.
To be strong. They are probably deep down somewhere hoping and praying
protect me,
that you will set boundaries, protect them. And it's a relief to them. And we always told our kids, hey, look, blame us. When your friends are like, how come, you don't do this or you don't do that? And you just say, my parents are so lame. Yep. And my father would kick my butt.
My father will kill me.
Yeah, exactly.
So sons used to say, my father
will kill me. That's why it's like, you guys never got in trouble in high school because we knew you would have killed us. And of course, that wouldn't have happened. I might have tortured them, but I wouldn't have killed them.
But we did give them permission to use that as their out.
Yep. I love that.
Because, hey, listen, Marines charge towards the sound of gunfire.
Right.
We don't run away from it.
Right.
And that's the culture we're in.
Yeah.
As parents, as spouses, as leaders, we run towards the conflict and we put our helmets on, put our mouthpiece in, and take the responsibility on our shoulders because our kids need us linked arms with our spouses, linked arms with people that have the same values and like-mindedness, and create a culture of love and respect of our children. We need to respect them. My kids need to respect me. Not if you don't respect them. It's a two-way street.
Mm-hmm.
Respect their uniqueness, right? So important. And like our 20-year-old daughter wanted to go to Los Angeles and give up her junior year of college to go to the Los Angeles Dream Center in inner city LA and serve the gangs and people experiencing homelessness, people experiencing drug addiction, people experiencing everything. And I was like, not safe. I don't want my daughter. And she's like, well, God's calling her to do this, Mike. I'm supposed to protect her, right? And then we go out there and it's an amazing place and it's beautiful. And she graduates in May, so I get her back in a month. So it's good.
Oh, that's awesome. So perfect segue in your opinions with, I'm honestly, when I think about kind of the decade plus 2 decades that you parented, quite possibly the most drastic transformation in all of history from a parenting's perspective, to where, cell phones were brand new with your oldest, to now where, you got 5-year-olds that are being given, electronics and social media, like just amazing. Like I remember hearing about a great grandmother who came to this country, and if I recall correctly, was told that she actually crossed the country in a covered wagon, in the early 1900s. You think about the 20th century, the 1900s, just the amount of technological advancement. But you think about the last 20, you guys have been parenting for 30 years. Holy smokes. Amazing. So what do you see that children need more than ever today from their parents?
Kids make good decisions when they have a really right vision of their future, right? And that's one of the things that you always were so good at with Shay, where you were like, well, where do you want to be? What do you see? Your kids need your help painting a picture of where they're going, and that's why they're making the decisions they're making today. So when a child is graduating high school and they know they're going to college, or they know they're going in the military, or they know they're going to an apprenticeship at a job, and they have that little summer break, whether it's a month or 2 or 3 months, the child that has a vision and a plan of where they're going makes different decisions in the summer than one who has no idea what's next. So what's next for your kids? Help them. Your kids need a dream board. Why am I getting up early? Why am I doing my homework? What do you want? What kind of life do you want? Where do you want to live? What do you want to do for a job? What kind of spouse do you want? What do you want your year to look like? What do you got to ask them questions to help them dial into what they want to create from the time they're like, freshman, sophomore in high school going forward, right? What else?
Purpose.
Yeah, that's what. I'm the mouth of this relationship. She's the brains.
They need purpose.
No surprise.
And they need it at every age. At every age. They have to have something
like a pet. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, it can be all kinds of things. It can be a pet. It can be volunteer work. It could be art. It could be music, right? Learning an instrument. And that's what extracurriculars are for, right? Yeah. They channel their energy. They channel their purpose. And they need their parents to support and engage with them in those things, right? They're trying to find, what is their bent? What is their thing? What are they going to do? So they explore, they commit for a period of time. We used to have our kids, okay, if you're going to do soccer, you're going to do the whole season. And then you can decide at the end of the season whether you want to do it again.
And they wanted to quit. And we said, your coach sucks, great. You're going to have sucky bosses.
Yes.
They always tested us. And then, but if you sign up for the dance class, you're going to take the dance class for the full year. And then we'll go from there. But then supporting them when they find those things that they're passionate about, even if those things may change. Don't get stuck on, sending your daughter to dance, which she loves for 10 years. And then all of a sudden she's like, this culture is getting weird at my dance school, and the girls are getting mean, and I feel like my body's not right, and I'm not good enough, and I'm this and that, and as you work with them through those issues, if it turns out they need to be moving on to something else, then move them on to something else. But it's a conversation. It's an always happening conversation where you can give your insights to your children from what you see, the insights that God gives you about them, and then the insights that God gives them about themselves, right? So their overall purpose in terms of who God created them to be and what his plan is for them on the earth. But then also, okay, what am I going to do this year?
Yep.
That leads me towards that.
Yeah, no, that short term and long term. And what I heard you guys describing was grit, which I think is undoubtedly one of the most important characteristics in successful people. And by successful, I really mean more impact versus, what someone's net worth is. But grit is so absent. There's such a vacuum of grit in our culture. And
a muscle, it has to be developed, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So Mike and Glori, awesome spending time with you this morning. I know we see each other a few times a year at different events. And obviously, Mike, we have the Semper Brotherhood. So appreciate your service to the country. And Glori, Beck and I have always tried to surround ourselves with people that were a little bit ahead of us, that we've understood the value of mentorship. I almost miraculously, because it wasn't something that was really imparted to me necessarily by my upbringing, but I've always known that if I could identify people that had what I wanted, that did what I wanted, or who were the type of person I wanted to be, that would have a positive influence on me. And you two are definitely fall into that category in many areas, but not the least of which is parenting. So any parting words of wisdom from either of you?
Yeah, I want to say that God chose you for a reason to be the parents of the children he gave you. And he has given each parent everything that they need, and he will give each parent everything that they need to raise the child that they've been given, right? He's a good father. He's not going to leave you or abandon you in this task. He's going to be there, but he chose you. So when things go south sometimes, which they do,
they will.
Remember that it isn't necessarily that you did something wrong. It could just be that God knew that you were the person that could handle this situation in the way he wanted it to be handled.
That's good.
And just continually seek him and ask the Holy Spirit for guidance for each child. And you've got this.
And awesome. Don't parent in the dark. We're so
don't Facebook parent.
Yeah, don't Facebook parent. I mean, because we do marriage coaching and parent coaching stuff through our church and budget coaching, and people would be like, "Oh, my kids are so this," and then we'd be like counseling them, and we'd be like, "You locked your kid out of the house and made him sleep in the garage." Come on, find people that you can trust to hold your parenting conversations in confidence. Talk about it. Get help. Read a book. Get counsel. Don't complain and scream and yell about your kids to people that can't help it get better, or your spouse. You're just attracting more negativity to yourself. It's no good. But get help. Parenting is a team sport. Whether it's your church, whether it's your PTA, whether it's your kids' teachers or coaches. Hey, we could really use help with this. I'm dealing with this thing. You have any advice for me or any ideas? Because your coaches, your kids' coaches and teachers and people around you, they got gems in them that might be unlocked and help you if you ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to seem ignorant, because we're all ignorant about something.
And find the right people that you can be transparent with, who will also be transparent with you about the struggles that they faced and overcome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to keep it real, or we can't help each other.
Because we have parenting stories with our kids that would make y'all's toenails curl.
Yeah.
We are not perfect parents. We don't have perfect kids, but we learned a lot along the way. You know,
Hopefully this will help.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, everyone, just a quick reminder, Parenting 101. Mike, what's the best way for people to pick this up if they want to?
Our publisher got cancer and has been sick and out of it. And so I don't even know if they have any of those things in stock. I mean, it's a faith-based parenting book, being completely transparent. If it's something you're interested in, find me on Facebook, follow me, message me. We have a few cases of them, and we'd be happy to share them with people.
Awesome. All right, Mike and Glori, thanks for joining me today. It was great having this conversation, and God bless you guys.